Hello everybody, JGC Anime here today. We're to review the Rise of the Shield Hero Season 3, so without further ado, let's just hop right into it. So, here we are, the third season. After the mess that was the second season, did Season 3 come back and bring us a brand new story that's really interesting? Kinda iffy. I do have a few feelings on how it all went overall, but I wouldn't say it's bad, but we'll get over that in the spoiler-free section and also the spoiler section and all that. But yeah, before we hop into any discussion of how I felt about the season, first I want to talk about a quick little explanation of what the story is. So basically, now that the whole thing with the Spirit Taurus and Otherworld are all dealt with, now Naofumi has to gather the other heroes in order to face the next upcoming threat, which is the Phoenix, which is coming up after like 2 or so months. And now he just has to gather the other heroes, get them to work together, and figure out what to do next. And yeah, that is basically how the story starts, and that's where the season tries to kick things off. Although also Naofumi is trying to get some more slaves to bring to his village, that way he can save them from slavery and stuff like that. But that's also happening, which leads them to an underground tournament. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about that too much right now, but yeah, that was terrible when it came to describing what happened at the beginning of the season, but we're just going to roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts for this season, it was alright. I definitely feel like it was better than season 2, but not by much, as we do suffer a bit of a pacing problem throughout this whole season, where every single plotline they try to cover is usually wrapped up between 1 to 2 episodes, maybe rarely 3 if they feel like it. Not to mention the fact that overall, none of the storylines really feel like they're adding up to anything. They all just felt like their own self-contained storylines, and they're not really relevant to the overall plot. Like, there's just never a moment where I see any stories really interconnecting with one another. It just feels like Naofumi, our main character, is just going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and there's no real consistent plot here. It's just whatever the author could think up and then just do it and just get it done. And for me, that didn't entirely work. Some of the storylines it worked fine because I wanted to get out of those storylines anyway, but there are other times where I just think, wow, we really could have dove in deeper into these characters in this world, but we are not, because we need to move the storyline along, and there really could have been a chance to expand on this. And I felt like that gave this a lot of missed potential. There were a lot of moments in here where I felt like there was very high potential to bring the show around and make something really good. However, there's never a moment where they let us rest and kind of collect ourselves and think, okay, this makes sense. Okay, this actually works with the story. They just want to constantly throw things at the wall and hope for the best. Now, mind you, I don't think that the storylines in this season are bad. In fact, when it comes down to it, some of them are actually quite good. However, the issue isn't about what the stories are, it's how they're executed. And I felt like a lot of these stories had a lot of potential, but then they were executed so poorly that by the time we finished them, I was just like, okay, next storyline, I guess. And I just feel like Season 3 was that awkward note where it could have been as good as Season 1 if they just gave it time to breathe. If they gave characters time to actually breathe and take in what's happening, actually build up plot lines, actually give us a reason to care about half these characters. Just give us something to work with besides just plot lines, and that's something this season definitely suffers from. Now, mind you, I do think that it is better than Season 2. I think it's a massive improvement. I think there are a lot of really good elements here, such as the fact that sometimes the budget for the animation is actually really nice and the animation's smooth and stuff. That's not always the case, but I do like some of the animation here, especially in the opening theme, which honestly is definitely going up there as one of my favorite opening themes of Shield Hero so far, since it was a really good opening theme, which is ironic because I really didn't like the last one for Season 2, but this season's opening was really good and I really liked it. But yeah, I just feel that the entire story of Season 3, the only thing that's really bringing it down from being a really good season is that they're not giving us the time to take in these stories and truly enjoy them for what they are. Because there's some really nice ideas here that I felt could really be explored. Well, most of them anyway. There is one storyline that I felt was almost kind of filler, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. I just felt like this season had so much potential to be so freaking good, and then it wasn't. It just had potential that was there, but it was gone. It was a bunch of missed potential. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't amazing either. It's just, there was something that could have been explored, but there wasn't. And yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling anything, so we're just going to the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to some of the spoilers. And if you have seen the show, I recommend sticking around here my thoughts, but if you haven't, just skip to the end so you don't get any spoilers. But if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around here my thoughts. So yeah, I'm going to count down from 5, and I'm going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, talking things over here and what I mean by some of the plot lines. First, I want to talk about this one plot line that to me just felt like filler. And that is the storyline involving this dragon pet that Naofumi ends up hatching from an egg. In my honest opinion, in this storyline, they really could have done something kind of special here, because I do think the idea behind it wasn't a bad one. But basically, the whole idea of this premise was that the dragon was just a baby dragon. It was enjoying its time, but then it swallowed some kind of gem that contained the souls of 2 different dragons, and those dragons were taking its body over, and this big fight breaks out where they have to try to save the baby dragon, which is also eating Philo, becoming more powerful and stuff like that. And it's bizarre, and honestly, there were parts of it I really enjoyed. However, by the time it was over, I didn't really feel like much was accomplished. It felt like we just wasted a bunch of time on this random storyline with this brand new character called Windia, who literally adds nothing to the plot. She's basically been gone for the rest of the season. She only existed in that storyline to be part of that storyline. And that's just a really big problem this whole season suffers from, where it tries to focus on all these brand new characters instead of focusing on our normal main ones. And because of that, we don't really get to interact with our main crew too much. Like this girl who apparently was raised by this dragon that was possessing part of the new dragon. But basically, she was raised by this dragon, and all of a sudden, she's super vital to the plot. She has some mystical, powerful OP abilities that she could use for some reason. And she even mentions how the dragon has a weak point, which maybe they hit the weak point. I don't know. The animation didn't really clarify, because it didn't even point out the weak point. They attacked it and then pulled Philo and the baby dragon. I don't know. I thought the baby dragon transformed into the dragon. I don't know how the baby dragon wound up inside of it. But basically, they rescued the baby dragon and Philo, and I was just so confused about what the frick was happening. Like, this Windia character, she just came in out of nowhere. She's been in the background. That's all I can say. She's been in the background, but she's never really felt like a prominent character in the story. She's never stood out earlier on where they pointed it out being like, that's Windia. We just got her into the village, which they could have said to maybe set up her character for this later storyline. She practically has no relevance before this storyline. And that is something that I really don't like, as it's this problem that the season seems to have. Well, they'll just make up stuff out of nowhere to progress the plot. The same thing happens at the end of the season, which we'll talk about that later, but there is an event at the end of the season which just comes straight out of nowhere, like this brand new revelation on Raphtalia that feels completely out of nowhere. Never brought it before. Never relevant, makes no sense, but it's there. But yeah, I'm gonna talk about that later. It's just that it feels like a lot of the new characters that are introduced are being so well developed, but I don't care about them. They were never introduced before this point to give me a reason to care about them. The most interesting characters of this season that sadly got the least explanation of their developments at all throughout this entire season was surprisingly the King of Mellomark, as well as the 3 heroes. Those 4 characters are the ones I was most interested in learning about this season, and we went over none of their backstories almost at all. Like, maybe we went a bit into them, but never into detail. In fact, some of them don't even get covered. Like Motoyasu, there's this reveal about his past that happens in his own light novel series, which I've only read like part of the first volume for that. It's not a bad one, but I haven't really finished it because it's not super interesting to me, but it's not a bad volume. But I would have never understood his backstory and the opening theme had I not read that book, because the anime never covers it. It teases about how maybe we're going to get to learn about the heroes in this season, but then besides Itsuki, who we do kind of dive into a bit more than the other 2 characters, there's not really much explanation. Like how the only thing we get about Ren's past before he suddenly goes all emo Batman mode where I'm not at fault or whatever after I got my team killed. It's just, he only became that depressed thanks to bitch who honestly was probably the best part of this season because of how much I still despise that woman. But basically, I just felt that Ren's character could have had a really good moment of character development, but we never went into his backstory as to who he was before he came to this world and why he is the way he is. His whole backstory that we actually got to see was him go to school. One of the people in the school asked him about something, and he said he's about to say yes, but then the rest of the group pops up. And he's like, okay, actually, no, never mind. That is about all we get from Ren's backstory. Then the rest of it's just dialogue. It's just a bunch of no showing, just telling. And that is a problem here, because not only do we suffer from not really getting to see why he was the way he was, but we were just told everything. We weren't really explained to through visuals why he's the way he was and how he ended up in the scenario he did. Which Motoyasu runs into that same problem, except even worse, because we don't even learn about that part. We just learned that he was chasing around his old teammates who all abandoned him because they realized, we're not gonna get rich with this guy. Let's go look for another hero. And then after that, he's confronted by who, as you can imagine, once again, she was a horrible person as she was manipulating Ren to teleport the 2 of them away. Meanwhile, Motoyasu falls in love with Philo in his depression, which was a bit uncomfortable, especially after that he started calling Naofumi father, which, made it even weirder, though it does explain why he acts the way he does in his own light novel series, so I kind of expected that. But basically, I felt like he definitely got the least development out of the group in terms of actual explanation to his character as to who he was before he came to this world. And I definitely think that people who haven't either checked out his light novel or learned about information about him online will just be absolutely confused as to why he has this shot in the opening theme that, honestly, if you haven't read his light novel, you wouldn't understand why it's like that. But I definitely feel like Motoyasu could have had more potential for explanation to his character, since that's something all the heroes could have gone through. Even Itsuki, who, as I mentioned before, gets a bit more of his backstory explained than the others, since apparently he came from like a world of superpowers or something. I don't actually know the full details of it. But basically, he was assigned to like this E-rank situation where he was basically seen as one of the weakest, and rather than trying to improve himself and who he was, he just started shutting himself away in his room before getting sent to this world, and he just believed in all this justice and stuff. That's the most kind of detail we got from one of the heroes, and that was a problem, because I felt like if we actually dedicated like half an episode to these characters' backstories and then went on to see what they became in this world, that would have been a lot better than what we got, where they just kind of flash through things telling you the basic stuff and then you have to just kind of roll with it. And it's just upsetting because I feel like if we actually dove into their backstories, we could have learned more. And then there's also the whole thing with the King of Melonmark, who I honestly can't, I'm just gonna call him Trash because that's what Naofumi calls him at the end of the first season. Basically, Trash has a really interesting backstory apparently, because it's revealed that he was once a hero himself. However, because of everything he's done, he ended up getting into the position he is now. But it turns out that one of the slaves that Naofumi ends up saving looks a lot like, I think they said it was his sister in this world. That honestly was really interesting, and I would have loved to hear more about that, but we didn't, because they were just like, all right, just gotta speed things along, just gotta keep moving. And it's a bit sad because there are so many backstories I want to learn about here. There's so many backstories I want to dive into and understand, but we don't get to see it because of the biggest problem this show has going for it, and that is its pacing. Literally in the first arc, there's this big tournament where Naofumi has to earn money to buy back all the slaves that were bought up by other people, which makes sense. It seems like an interesting arc. It could probably last 3 to 4 episodes, but no, they wrap it up in 2 because apparently everyone else forfeited, which means Naofumi just has to fight this one person who, after recognizing Raphtalia, this new person seems to just be like, all right, I'll just throw the fight and let you guys win. I just feel like there could have been more to the tournament than just everybody's dropping out because they're all going to attack Naofumi on the side or something, and all this other crazy, bizarre stuff is going down. It's just, it felt very odd to me, and I definitely think that we could have dove in more into the pacing issues of this season than we already have, because the pacing is not good. It's not very good. There are so many elements to this that could have been explored so much more, but they're not because the pacing is so bad when it comes to trying to develop these characters. As I said before, if we could dedicate a lot of time to these other characters' backstories and got to know them better, I'd probably have more of an emotional impact to a lot of these characters. It's kind of like the problem I had with Ose from the second season, where she had this big dramatic death with Naofumi, and I should be sad, I think, but I'm not. It's the same reason here with the whole dragon arc that I said felt like filler. Like, when I was watching it, I didn't feel like I was watching a truly emotional story about this little girl who was raised by a dragon, watching the said dragon, who apparently it was the dragon that Ren killed a while back. Basically, she was watching this dragon and having to say goodbye to it again, and I felt like I should have been feeling something, but I wasn't, because I don't care enough about this girl. We barely know her. Why should I suddenly care about her emotional backstory and everything else? And how she mentions, oh, there's a weak point. Okay, so where's the weak point? They don't tell us. They just apparently strike it or something and then just roll with it. It's such a confusing finale to how the whole thing felt, which is sad because I was actually kind of starting to enjoy it. But yeah, it's just, there's so many issues here with the story's plot, and it's not really helped by sometimes the animation, while good a lot of the time, can be a bit iffy at times as well. Like how there are times where Philo will be pulling a carriage, you could so easily tell it is CGI. It's honestly painful CGI, which sometimes I don't mind CGI in shows. It's not really something I tend to think about often, but because the whole CGI of Philo was just right in your face, it was kind of hard not to pick up on it. Like, it was real easy to see. And yeah, there are some other things here that I felt like they could have been explored more. Like how there's this clown girl who talks with her voice kind of being distorted a little bit, and I would have liked to know more about her character, since she was apparently from a destroyed world, which would have been very interesting to see, but nope, we don't dive into that either. And then the whole season ends on this weird setup where it turns out Raphtalia was a princess the whole time. And there's this enemy nation, or these people who wanted another emperor. So they've been watching over Raphtalia since she was born. And now that they've seen her wear this random dress, now all of a sudden they want to go and kill her. Because now Naofumi has to declare war on them. It's just like, what? Why is this happening? Oh, and apparently one of the other new characters was actually a guardian protecting Raphtalia all this time, because Raphtalia was a princess. No, why are you guys not interested? At least not me. I wasn't. I didn't care. Oh, man, that was the biggest pull of ridiculousness that I have heard of this season. I just felt that when I was watching this season, I thought, okay, it wasn't great, but I don't think it's that bad. And then they pulled that little stunt at the end, and I just think, okay, this is the same situation I felt when I was watching that one part of Slime Season 2, where one character that was meant to be this simple side character who didn't really do too much was suddenly revealed to actually be someone really important, which felt completely out of nowhere. And it just felt so bizarre to me that they thought, oh yeah, by the way, Raphtalia, she was a princess this whole time. I just thought that was so dumb and stupid, and it clearly just existed to create this next filler plotline we gotta go take care of before the Phoenix arrives. A Phoenix that we know nothing about, so why should I care when it arrives? I honestly don't know. Although I would be lying if I said I wasn't kind of curious to see Naofumi go and take on a kingdom. That sounds kind of interesting. I just wish they went about it a different way than this stupid princess plot. But yeah, oh man. I guess what I'm trying to say here is I did like a lot of the elements here, especially how Rishia, who sadly gets sidelined for most of the season, gets a really nice moment near the end where she manages to take down Itsuki in a battle, which is really interesting. Though I do question why, even though, yes, Ren and Itsuki are both really depressed due to specific reasons during the Spirit Tortoise stuff, all of a sudden they're fully believing his words, even though they've clearly known from the beginning, at least from the beginning of when she was having her whole trial, they know she's a terrible, manipulative liar. I don't know how they still fall for her tricks. Like, even if they were mentally unstable, I don't see how the heck they'd believe her. It's just bizarre to me, but it was still interesting enough because it worked with his character. I felt like, yes, I could absolutely see her doing this, and I was fully on board with hating her again this season. But I definitely think that overall, those two definitely could have been a lot better, especially with their backstories. Primarily Ren. I feel like Ren had an interesting backstory that we could have explored, but instead we just get the more minor parts to it, and then we're just told a bunch of it. And I definitely think that there was more there that could have been explored, but we didn't get that in the end. And it just left me feeling a bit unsatisfied with how things wrapped up, but it is what it is. At the very least, I can say that Season 3, while not as good as Season 1, was better than Season 2, which, granted, is a very high bar to cross, but Season 3 just kind of was a bunch of storylines that were clumped together to prepare for a storyline that I honestly don't know if I should care about, since I don't know how big of a threat this Phoenix is. And then we have the whole other thing with that other kingdom that hates Raphtalia for wearing a dress of an empress or something, and now they want to kill her and stuff like that because she's a princess or whatever. It's just, I'm sorry, that part really got on my nerves when I was watching. I just thought, this is so out of nowhere, it's so stupid. And Philo's just off on an adventure with Melty and all of that. But yeah, I definitely think that this season, while better than Season 2, doesn't really add up to what made Season 1 so good. And there's a lot of really dumb moments that I felt like really could have been improved, especially with how there's this one storyline at the beginning during the tournament where there's this white tiger kid, demi-human, that Naofumi decides to bring on board, who apparently is a strong fighter in the ring. And I thought, okay, we're gonna get to see his fighting skills, because while Naofumi's away, some bandits decide to attack his village, which I think was interesting. But then all of a sudden, rather than going off and defending the village, showing off his prowess, the white tiger kid instead just like, I'm actually weak, so I'm just gonna summon Naofumi back here, because that is the reason that I'm here now. I'm just calling for his help. I'm not gonna fight myself. No, I'm just gonna get pinned to the ground immediately, which was very disappointing because I was really hoping to see him shine a bit, but it is what it is. And yeah, I definitely think this season was better than Season 2, but again, that's not a high bar to cross. And while I would recommend maybe checking it out if you're a fan of Shield Hero, I wouldn't say it's something you'd have to force yourself to sit down and watch through like a full binge watch session. Maybe watch it throughout a week or something. It's a lot easier to watch it that way, because if you were watching it all at once, it would probably be a bit rough to sit through. But yeah, overall, not a bad season, and I definitely think that it's a massive step up from season 2, and after hearing there's a season 4 on the way, I'm probably gonna end up checking that out too. But if it continues going down this path of mediocre plot lines, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna stick with this series. Even though I've been reading the light novels now, I'm only on like volume 5, I believe. I'm still trying to get through that, and I'm hoping that maybe there will be some good moments for me in there, but I don't know. Just overall, I think that Shield Hero had its ups and downs, and I think that season 3 has been on more of the upside. It's still not the best, but it's not bad either. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? Overall, Shield Hero season 3 isn't bad. It's not the best, but it's not terrible. Basically, it's not bad, but not amazing either. It is just an alright thing there. It's a thing that exists. It's a fun little watch if you just want to maybe just check in on Alphemy, see what's going on. Maybe you get to see the other heroes a bit more. Maybe see what's going on with them. But it's definitely no Shield Hero Season 1. There are definitely elements here that bring the show down, and I definitely think that it should have gotten a full 24 episode treatment, as we don't get to dive deep enough into the other character stories as we should have. And I definitely think that overall, this season needed a lot more patches to make itself a lot better, since there are definitely some rushed moments in here, characters that get way too much attention despite not playing a part in later stuff, and a finale that honestly just sets up a plotline that I thought was kind of ridiculous in the first place. But I'm still curious to see how they're gonna wrap it up. And yeah, overall, I give The Rising of the Shield Hero Season 3 a 7 out of 10. There are some good moments in there, and it is better than Season 2, but I wouldn't really say it tops the awesomeness that was Season 1, and I'm very curious to see where Season 4 might take things, since you never know. Maybe Season 4 will be good. I don't know. I can hope. Maybe I'm just coping with that, but I hope so. I hope Season 4 can be good. And yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also get anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!